I'm Anna,
I'm Jessica.
and this is the Paranoia Pair.
It's the second week of November. Have we started putting up Christmas decorations? I haven't, but I've definitely gotten ideas. I've seen a bunch of DIY Christmas decoration things come up, and I really want to do them, but I do not need another hobby. I already have 5, and I don't do them. I did buy a Christmas garland thing. It just says like Merry Christmas and it's got like the tassels and stuff. Because listen, I needed to buy it because once like the third week of November hits, everything, you might as well kiss all the decorations you want goodbye. They're sold out. They're already sold out at my Walmart of a couple really cute ornaments that I wanted to get because I want to do like a gingerbread house theme. I already have a couple gingerbread ornaments. I have a thing where I need all of the things and I hide them from my husband by only buying a couple things every time I go to the store. And then I sneak them into my collection. And then when he asks when I bought it, I can say I don't know because truly I won't remember. Speaking of, hey Jessica, you're totally listening to this right now. And I have sent you like 1,000 messages already that I know you're probably not going to read them all. Are we still doing DIY Christmas gifts this year? Because I haven't started. I haven't started making yours. And I definitely know you haven't started making mine. What if I just gave What if I just gave her like a framed picture of a stick figure that I drew? Onward to today's episode. Today we are going to be diving into the life of a man who pulled off one of the boldest scams in history. The scam, nothing too crazy. Just selling a national landmark, not once, but twice. Very mindful, very demure. His name was Victor Lustig, and he was born Robert V. Miller on January 4th in 1890 in Hostin, Bohemia, and that's now the Czech Republic. For my sanity and to make the story less confusing, I will be referring to him as Victor Lustig since it's the name he's widely known as. His dad was a local burgomaster, which did not mean that he was the champion of grilling burgers. He was the mayor. He sent Victor off to a boarding school in Dresden, Germany, and there he studied languages. He was really smart and a quick learner, but also he was a pretty big troublemaker. His father then sent him off to university in Paris, and there he became fluent in Czech, German, English, French, and Italian. At 19, during his school break, he took a liking to gambling, and while he was there, he was attacked by a man who thought that Victor was paying his girlfriend too much attention. Victor was left with a scar on the left side of his face as a result. Victor left school and decided to embark on a career in crime. He began committing dozens of petty crimes under several different aliases across Europe. His favorite, though, was Count Victor Lustig. He used this name while traveling transatlantic cruise ships, and there he gambled and cheated wealthy passengers out of their money. I mean, can I say good for him? Because I'm going to say it. He also would pose as a musical producer seeking investors in a non-existent Broadway production. And on these trips, he ended up meeting a man named Nicky Arnstein. Nicky was an American professional gambler and a con artist. Victor would become his apprentice, and Nicky would teach Victor the art of conning. Victor's success as a con man boiled down to mastering a few golden rules. He knew how to listen intently and let people share their opinions, and agreed just enough to win them over. He didn't boast, he didn't push for information, and he made sure that he did not have any sloppy behavior, especially while drinking. He let his confidence speak for itself, and he created a level of trust that led people to open up to him. By sticking to these rules, Victor managed to charm wealthy travelers on cruise ships into falling for his schemes, turning scamming into his full-time job. I don't know what people think is so appealing about a cruise ship, but there is something about being trapped on a boat in a giant body of water that is terrifying. Terrifying. Have any of you seen The Poop Cruise? I think we've talked about this before. Add that to the list, guys, of things that could go horribly wrong on a cruise ship and why I will not be going. If I can't drive there, I'm not going. He didn't spill many details about these scams, but he played the long game well. And then World War I broke out, and that kind of puts a pause on Victor's cruise ship travels. So Victor decides he's going to settle in Paris. After a few years, he goes to New York to meet up with Nikki again. And Nikki helped him get some connections to the American underworld. And with that, Victor set off on his own escapades, and he pretended to be a displaced European aristocrat. He committed some investment frauds in the US and Canada so he could live the luxurious lifestyle he wanted. And he also set up a fake off-track racehorse betting parlor. He knew someone who worked at a Western Union who helped him, and Victor would delay the results of the race long enough for him to place winning bets. He also convinced a new gambler to bet on the wrong horse, making his prize pool even bigger. When Victor was in major need of cash quickly, he would often fall back on his Rumanian box scheme. And this was a small mahogany box that had 2 slots, and then it had like a couple levers that worked to, quote, duplicate currency. He would ask his target to provide a large bill, usually it was $100, and explain that it took 6 hours to make a perfect duplicate that would be accepted as a legal tender by any bank. And then 6 hours later, Victor's box had 2 $100 bills, both of which would be determined to be genuine. And that's because they were. And this is where I got kind of confused because, like, what do you mean they were? How is this a scheme? Victor would plant the second bill and then run this several more times until the person was fully convinced it was legit and willing to cough up a ton of money to own this box. Victor would time the con carefully so that he could be far away by the time it was figured out. Another scheme was, in Missouri, 1922, under the name Robert Duvall, he contacted the American Savings Bank and offered them $22,000 in World War I Liberty bonds for a ranch. Victor wasn't really interested in the farmland though. He sold the bank an additional $10,000 in bonds for cash to cover, quote, operating expenses. The bonds were legitimate, and when Victor handed over the bonds in exchange for the cash and deeds, he pulled like a sneaky little switcheroo and walked out with everything, leaving the bank empty-handed. The bank was desperate to catch him. Obviously, we're talking about $32,000, which in today's money is $617,000. So they hired private detectives and they actually did track him down. Some say he was tracked down in Kansas City and others claim it was New York. So there's nothing like definitive on where they caught him. Either way, once they caught him, Victor worked his charm and convinced them that pressing charges would cause a scandal and it would tank the bank's reputation and cause a rush among people to withdraw their money from the bank that could ruin them. Not only did Victor talk his way out of all the charges, but he managed to squeeze an extra $1,000 out of them to keep his mouth shut. Imagine scamming a bank and then getting an extra $1,000. How do I become this man? Victor showed up in Montreal and worked his usual magic. This time he set his sights on a banker named Linus Merton. Victor arranged for someone to swipe Linus's wallet and then showed up at his doorstep with it, completely intact, claiming he just found it laying on the street. And Linus was touched by Victor's honesty and invited him in. And just like that, Victor had a new friend. Is that really how easy it is to make new friends? After winning Merton's trust, Victor presented a opportunity for Merton. He told Merton that his cousin Emile worked as a bookie, which basically means that he helps people gamble and play sports bets. And that he had rigged the telegraph wire that delivered race results. And Emile was able to get the results a minute before they became official. But the catch was that Victor and Emile didn't have the funds to capitalize on this insider info. And that's where Merton came in. They let him try out the system with a few small bets, which he won. And it seemed like a foolproof plan. Then Emile dropped kind of a bombshell on Merton. He had to leave town. And this caused Merton to panic. And he was eager to win one last time. And he wanted to make it worth it. One last big win. So Merton bet $30,000 on a race. Emile took the money and disappeared. And would you guess it? Victor also disappeared. Merton couldn't even report this to the police because he himself was trying to cheat the system by participating in this scam. In the end, Victor slipped away, and that seems to be something he is exceptionally good at. In 1925, Victor made his way back to Paris, and he stumbled across a newspaper article about the Eiffel Tower. The story talked about how the tower, which was built for the 1889's World's Fair, was now a rusty old burden with skyrocketing maintenance costs. Here's a little fun fact for you. The tower wasn't even meant to be permanent, and back when it was built, the locals hated it, calling it a giant eyesore. But during World War I, it got a PR makeover, basically, and became a symbol of Parisian pride. But by the 1920s, it was a financial headache. So, knowing this, Victor saw an angle. He researched the top scrap metal dealers in Paris and sent them letters on fake government stationery introducing himself as the deputy director of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. Say that 5 times fast. I'm not even gonna try. In these letters, he promised them a highly profitable business offer, but he demanded total secrecy. Victor's story? He told them that the city was secretly planning to scrap the Eiffel Tower because they couldn't afford to maintain it anymore. They were keeping it hush-hush to avoid a public outcry. And one key part of the plan was figuring out how to deal with all of the leftover metal. Victor set himself up at the fancy Hotel de Crillon, one of Paris's most luxurious spots, to orchestrate this scheme. Please do not tell me if I pronounced that wrong. Listen, I tried with the accent. I did Anthony Giacalone once, and now it's mandatory. He held meetings with scrap dealers, telling them the city had decided to take bids for the demolition of the Eiffel Tower and their rights to its 7,000 tons of metal. Victor spared no expense renting limousines, giving tower tours, all to size up the dealers and figure out who would be the easiest target. He claimed that he was in charge of picking the buyer, and played up their reputations as honest businessmen while sprinkling commentary about how the Eiffel Tower didn't quite fit in with Paris's other iconic landmarks like the Gothic cathedrals or the Arc de Triomphe. Did I say that? Listen, remember what I said about the accents. Victor zeroed in on Andre Poisson, which I did have to YouTube a video on how to pronounce it, and I learned that it means fish. You're welcome. Anyway, he zeroed in on Andre Poisson, who was a man desperate to climb the ranks of Paris's elite business circles. Once Poisson showed the most interest, Victor set up a one-on-one meeting and pulled out his next move. He claimed to be a corrupt government official, saying that his salary did not match the lifestyle he wanted. Tale as old as time, Beauty and the Beast. Poisson was convinced this was his big break to join the high society, and he agreed to pay a hefty bribe to seal the deal. So Victor walked away with the bribe and the funds for the supposed sale, which was about 1,200,000 francs. Which, are you ready? Bum, bum, ba-dum. 5.59 million in today's money. And then he just fled to Austria. Seems like a good gig. Victor figured out Poisson. Listen, I said it like that once and now I have to. I can't say it like a stupid American. Victor figured Poisson would be too humiliated to report being conned to the police. So he kept an eye on the newspapers to see if his scam made the headlines. Sure enough, it didn't. So with the coast clear, Victor headed back to Paris just 6 months later to pull off the same stunt all over again. Because why fix it if it's not broke? Or whatever the saying is. So Victor reused the same official-looking letterheads and invited 5 new scrap metal businesses into his scheme. He treated them to fancy dinners and charmed the pants off of them, just like he did the first time. However, as he was finalizing a deal with one of the men, another one grew suspicious and reached out to the police. And the moment Victor caught wind of this, he scrapped the plan entirely and then he made a quick escape to the United States. Now that he was in America, he went back to his Rumanian box scheme. On one occasion, he sold it to a Texas sheriff who caught on that he was scammed, and he tracked Victor down all the way to Chicago. He convinced the sheriff that he simply wasn't using the machine correctly. There are multiple levers, so I could understand. Victor gave him a large sum of cash as compensation, but the money was counterfeit. And in 1925, Victor Lustig pulled off one of his most daring cons by swindling Al Capone. So despite Capone's reputation, Victor literally, he didn't care. Didn't even flinch. He convinced Capone to invest $50,000 in a get-rich-quick scheme, promising double his money in 90 days. So the specifics remain a mystery, but whatever Victor pitched was convincing enough for Al Capone to hand over the cash. And instead of running off with the money, Victor let it sit in a bank for nearly 2 months, and when the time was up, he returned it to Capone and admitted the deal had fallen through. Victor explained the money was gone, but he was willing to repay every cent out of his pocket. And this was to show Al Capone that he was an honest man and to kind of earn his trust. And it worked. He was impressed by Victor's integrity, and he decided to let him keep a portion of the money as a reward. The reports kind of vary, but he walked away with somewhere between $1,000 to $5,000. And in the 1930s, Victor decided to start a counterfeit money operation, and he partnered with 2 men from Nebraska, Tom Shaw, who was a chemist skilled at replicating the intricate details of real currency, William Watts, who was a master engraver who created the money printing plates. And together they formed a counterfeit empire, producing pretty authentic looking bills that even copied the tiny red and green threads found in legitimate currency. Honestly, they were really good at this. Victor organized the distribution process, and he recruited delivery men who remained oblivious to what they were actually carrying. He was using the alias Robert Miller to make sure his identity remained unknown. The operation was really successful, and they flooded the US economy with over $100,000 in fake money each month, which in today's money is, oh my God, almost $2 million today. Banks across New York started regularly reporting counterfeit bills, which prompted the Secret Service to form a special task force. And the counterfeit money was called Lustig money. It was appearing everywhere from racetracks to banks across the country. And the agents feared that the amount of counterfeit bills might destabilize the entire monetary system. Despite their efforts, though, Victor managed to lay low and not get captured. Why don't they just print off more real money? I know there's like a whole, it could collapse, whatever, and devalue the money, value of the dollar bill will go down. I'm just a girl with a laptop, okay? And a stupid little microphone. However, Victor's downfall came from somewhere nobody was expecting. Okay, now we get to my favorite part of the story, and it's like the pettiest thing ever, and I'm here for it. The downfall. Who was responsible for his downfall? His own mistress, Billie Mae. She was furious after discovering that he was cheating on her with Tom Shaw's mistress. She anonymously tipped off federal agents, revealing the location of Victor. And in May of 1935, the Secret Service arrested him outside a New York hotel. By then, Victor had altered his appearance so dramatically. He grew a mustache and he adopted a whole new demeanor that agents, they initially doubted they had the right man. That's how good he was. But a search of his belongings uncovered a key that led them to a locker in the Times Square subway station, and inside they found money printing plates and counterfeit bills amounting to $51,000, which is a little over $1 million today, and chemicals used in the counterfeiting process. Victor was held in the Federal House of Detention, which was a facility that was hailed as being escape-proof, but Victor wasn't done yet. The day before his trial, he stole enough bed sheets to make a rope and cut through the screen of a bathroom window using wire cutters. Where did he get these wire cutters? He probably stole them. I don't know. This man just proves that nothing is impossible. So, dressed in prison-issued clothes, he climbed out of the building pretending to clean windows while dozens of people watched without suspicion. His freedom was pretty short-lived, though, because Victor was recaptured in Pittsburgh only 27 days later. At his trial, he initially pleaded not guilty, but with William Watts also captured and providing damning testimony as a state witness, he changed his plea to guilty. He was sentenced to 15 years in Alcatraz for counterfeiting charges and an additional 5 years added for his prison escape. Are we surprised, though? His cons did not end there. He kept doing what he did best, charming people and looking for loopholes. He acted like the perfect prisoner. He was super polite, but behind the scenes, he was working some angles. One of the things he kept trying to pull was faking a serious illness. He figured if he could convince the guards he was too sick for Alcatraz, he might get transferred somewhere easier to break out of. Rumors started circulating, though, that Victor had attempted to forge medical records claiming he suffered from serious health conditions in hopes of being transferred to a less secure prison hospital. A place where an escape might actually be possible. True to form, he faked chest pains, fainting spells, and anything else he thought might convince the authorities that he was too frail for the rock, which is what they called Alcatraz. It not really Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Can you smell what the rock is cooking? It's crime. That was dumb. Lustig's last con, escaping Alcatraz, was one he could not pull off because his health genuinely did decline over the years, and he eventually died of pneumonia in 1947 at the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. He was 57 years old at the time of his death, and secret agents said that the occasional counterfeit bill known as Lustig money still managed to turn up years after his death, which is crazy. And that's it. That is the story of Victor Lustig. The Eiffel Tower survived. I just love that this mistress was like, oh, you're cheating on me with another mistress. I'm not having that. And then just reported him. I wonder what happened after. Hope she like married a rich man. She deserves it. There are reports that there is a woman who is named on his death certificate as his wife, Susan Quadbuck Miller. And it's also speculated that he has a daughter, but he kept so much of his personal life a secret. It's kind of hard to find information about his wife and daughter and when he got married and such. Victor also created kind of the 10 commandments for con men. And that is be a patient listener, never look bored, wait for the other person to reveal any political opinions and then agree with them. Let the other person reveal religious views and then have the same ones. Hint at sex talk, but don't follow it up unless the other person shows a strong interest. Never discuss illness. Unless some special concern is shown, never pry into a person's personal circumstances. They'll eventually tell you everything. Never boast, just let your importance be quietly obvious. That rule obviously does not apply all the time in the United States. Never be untidy and never get drunk.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.